All right. So let's continue kind of where we left off when I moved from the cardiac ICU to the cardiac step-down unit. I ended up spending almost a week there in total. So I moved there on Saturday evening and I was discharged the following Friday morning. And I'll talk more about that as I kind of go through my notes. A lot happened during the week, but really just want to give a high overview of kind of the main points of what was going on. But we'll start with really the first night and first day. So Saturday night and into Sunday in the step down unit. Continued to be very, very uncomfortable. Thankfully, they had written a prescription to continue me on the dilaudid for at least the first night. I think they written because they don't want to give that to you outside the ICU because it is such a strong medication. But they were able to write that for me because I was very uncomfortable still. I think I only had 2 or maybe 3 of the 4 doses that were prescribed to me because they wanted to get it off of me quickly. But again, to manage the pain, at least for the first night. So that first night was quite uncomfortable. Another thing that, I was also taking Oxycontin or Oxycodone at the time too, and that didn't really seem to work, but that's kind of where it shifted me to. But, one of the things that I still remember that, when I first got there and, the night nurse came and was talking to me. She gave me the little jug that I can, urinate in, and I just remember her saying, like, I don't know, maybe it was 10 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock, somewhere in that range that night when she came in and gave that to me and said, I need to pee by the time she came back at 11 p.m. or something like that, or she would have to do a straight catheter to empty my bladder. And that was enough to kind of scare me into making sure I tried to pee as much as I could. So good for her, and that worked. And that was, throughout the week, between being able to get up later on and go and that kind of stuff. I drank a lot of water, so they were quite happy with that. Just getting a lot of that stuff out of my system. But again, a funny thing, I guess you could say, for me was across the top of my butt, my top glutes, whatever you want to say, were still just completely tight and hurt so bad. So it was very hard to move and get comfortable. I was still very weak in the upper body, but trying to move was just so painful. But again, that was just one of those kind of random things that hit me just because of the surgery and how I've been sitting and sleeping and that kind of thing. I was also I didn't mention it in the ICU, but I had a fever, and I had a fever for a few days still in the step down unit. So I was very, very hot for a few days. We had the air condition cranked down. I mean, it was an ice box in my room, but I was still just so hot. And the interesting thing was that I couldn't really sweat. But I was still very hot. I actually had a friend of mine bring in a little shop fan, a little DeWalt shop fan that was a rechargeable battery. That thing was a lifesaver. So again, things we didn't really think about going into it, but having that little fan there was great because especially at night and just having that air blowing on me really helped. Again, I think a big thing that really helped me. And so thankful for is my wife was with me the entire time. She was able to stay with me throughout the week. So even though it was sometimes difficult to get nurses because of the short staffing and that kind of thing, she was able to help with a lot of that stuff when I couldn't get out of bed. So that was fantastic. Really for the first few days, I didn't have an appetite. Meal services would come every so often, and I may eat 3 or 4 bites, and that was basically it. Which the PA came in on Sunday to do rounds, and it's one of the things she said that's completely normal. Some people get their appetite back quickly. Mine just seemed to take a few days to come back. It's not that the food was bad. It's just I didn't really have an appetite. The other thing in the step down unit that was for the whole week is every 3 hours or so, one of the techs would come in and take vitals, and so that was blood pressure, temperature, pulse, the oxygen levels, pulse oxygen, and then also had blood glucose. So finger prick every 3 hours, and finally that stopped around Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday, because my numbers were fine, and so they were able to cut off the blood glucose. So it was just the other vitals every 3 hours, which was completely fine. It's just at night that's kind of tough because when you're trying to sleep, they come in, but completely understandable and glad they did it. The other thing was just pain management throughout the whole week. Again, once I got out the Dilaudid, it started me at Oxy 15, and I could have that every 3 hours. And after a day or so, they dropped me to Oxy 10. And one of the things that I noticed, there's a couple days where I kind of let it go a little bit longer because I felt okay. And playing catch up with pain, the nurses would say this to me, but I was kind of hard-headed and didn't really want to be on the Oxy, to be honest, but it did hurt. Having the tubes in my chest, that was one of the big things, just not being able to take a deep breath for various reasons, but the tubes were just very, very uncomfortable. And then, I could feel them in there, and I'll talk about that here in a moment, but anyway, so trying to play catch up is not the best thing. So once I kind of figured out that, hey, I need to be on more of a tight regimen, between 3 and 4 hours to take the medication, that's what I did. And then, that really started working probably more on Monday. I started getting at least better pain management out of that. And so, a lot of times it would basically, after about 20-30 minutes after I took it, I would be quite tired and take a rest. And so that was kind of how that moved along. Talk about some of the other things. So I also had 2 sets of pacing wires or 4 wires, whatever, on my heart, which is normal. And so Monday morning, the PA came in and said, okay, we're going to take the pacing wires out, which, the process took 5 minutes and that kind of thing. But it was a very, very strange feeling pulling those wires off. It almost felt to me like the old trick, wind-up buzzer where you shake a hand and push the button and it kind of gives you the electric shock, and it's just that kind of buzzing feeling. It almost felt that way in my heart, or just in my chest, however you want to say it. But it was a very odd feeling. Again, it took 5 minutes. Wasn't the most pleasant time, but that was done. And then later that day, so I had 3 chest tubes. I had 2, and I can't remember exactly. I want to say 2 19s and a 16 size-wise. And so later that day, the PA had said, "Hey, let's go ahead and take out the 2 19s." And so the nurse came in, and this was something I was looking forward to because I knew how uncomfortable. And they kept saying, once you get those tubes out, you'll feel so much better, kind of relief-wise. But I wasn't looking forward to it because it just did not seem like a fun thing to do. So the nurse came in. She was very good at it. She had to remove the stitch that was holding it in place, and then basically I kind of had to. She told me, hold your breath and kind of act like you're pushing to have a bowel movement. And she just kind of pulled the tubes out, and my wife was there, and I didn't look. I looked away because I knew I didn't want to see that because, again, I'm just kind of uncomfortable with a lot of those things. But my wife said, the tubes were, at least a foot long, which was, they came in, right here. So having all that up in my chest is just amazing to me that's how it works. But that's what happened. And so we got the first 2 out, and I did feel some better, but I could still feel that last tube in. And they wanted to keep that in for another day. So that was, not great to know that, the anticipation of looking forward to having that process again. But having two of those out was nice to know. Then, the other thing that was kind of going on during the first few days of the step down unit was they really wanted me to have a bowel movement, and that was a big piece of the whole thing. And so I was on, Colace and Docalax and maybe one other thing, and it just, my stomach was just cramping and so bad, and I finally just said, hey, I need to lay off some of this stuff. I know, I need to have a bowel movement, but it was so uncomfortable because I couldn't even really pass gas or do anything. I was just cramping, and so they let me lay off a little bit of that, and I finally started working again probably on Wednesday. So it did take me a few days, but that was nice to kind of get that passed, because again, the cramping was just very, very uncomfortable. The other thing that happened, a couple other things that happened on Monday. One was my surgeon made his rounds with the PA that morning, and every morning, Monday through Friday of that week, he was in there 7 a.m. making the rounds and looking at everything. Everything looked great. So they started me on Monday, also with the warfarin, Coumadin, to try to get to work through that process. And so the big thing that my surgeon said, even coming in on Monday, is, hey, I want to get you out as fast as possible. You'll heal better at home. You'll recover better at home. And so the thing that we really needed to do is get my INR in the right area. So they started me Monday with a 5 milligram dose. And so that meant every morning, then it was around 3 a.m. for some reason, they came and did a draw and took blood for multiple blood tests, but also to check the INR. So again, that started that on Monday. And then, really, the rest of Monday was okay. I did get up on Monday, was able to get up and start kind of walking, and so I'll try to maybe throw in a little bit of that. Sunday, I walked a little bit around the room. It was very difficult to get up. I had to have help. And I think some of that was just because the discomfort and not being able to push up the way I normally could, but also, again, going back to it, my butt just hurt, and so it was very hard for me to move. But I kind of just walked a little bit around the room, and I would get up from the bed and move to the chair on Monday or on Sunday. And then Monday was the first day I really kind of got up and walked, because that was one of the things the nurse said, hey, I want you to walk at least to the end of the hall and back. And so that first walk outside of the room was a little nerve-wracking, because I could do it, but it was just the first time I'd done it, and so was able to walk down to the end of the hall and back, and it was just a very difficult thing to do, but it was a good start. Like I said, I'm just looking through my notes, and so that was a big milestone, is to have that first one out of the way. The other thing that started in the step-down unit, basically every morning at 8 a.m., it was time for a chest x-ray. And so the first one, and I believe this was Sunday morning, it was a mobile thing, and so it was able to be done in the room. But I was sitting in a chair, and the guy came in and said it was time for the x-ray, and so he said I needed to be in the bed. So I struggled, got into the bed, and then they had to lay the board behind me and kind of lay me back. And again, I was in so much discomfort and pain. At that time, I still had the tubes in, and still felt pretty fresh off of surgery. And they were trying to pick me up to shove the board down, and it was just shocking to me. And I kind of remember asking, what is going on? But slowly that got better throughout the week. So every morning he would come in, the X-ray tech would come in, and as the week progressed, I was able to kind of lift up and slide the board in. But that first one was quite rough. So that was really kind of getting through on Monday. Again, I'm bouncing around a lot trying to look at my notes, but sleep wasn't great. The night times were kind of tough to go into, because everything was quiet. My wife was asleep. And if I couldn't sleep, I'd wake up and it's just dark and quiet. And that was the first couple of nights, and just that was a tough thing. I had brought a whole backpack full of things to do. A couple books. I'd brought things to watch, and my little journal to take notes in, and all these things. That I thought this would be great. And really, for the first few days, I had zero mental capacity to do any of that. Even watching TV, I just couldn't do. I would turn it on, just couldn't pay attention. So again, at night it was very rough whenever I couldn't sleep, because there was no one there, no one really to talk to. And so again, not the most pleasant thing, but I mean that's kind of what my idea what or my experience was there. The other thing that started there in the step-down unit is every 8 hours or so, I was given a shot of heparin, and that had been in my stomach or my arm. And the first few days, or first few times I got it, they would say, "Hey, this one." They say it burns, but I didn't really feel it. I think it's because I was on a higher level of medication. But later in the week, boy, I was not looking forward to that shot, because it did burn again. These are all things that lasted maybe a minute, but when you're that uncomfortable and you just can't move, in the anticipation of it, it was not the most fun, but obviously very needed. Tuesdays, we'll get into Tuesday. Tuesday, after the rounds that morning, they checked my remaining tube and said, "Hey, we're good to remove this today." So that was going to happen later today. And around 10:30 that morning, the nurse came in to remove that last tube. And again, after having that done the day before, having the 2 tubes out, the anticipation of it made it worse. But the last tube was the 16. It was a smaller one, so she was like, "It probably won't be as bad, but it is a little bit longer." And again, I could still feel that discomfort in my chest. But so went through the same process, pulled that out, and there was relief afterwards. I don't know if it was as much as, wow, I feel like I can actually take a deep breath, as much as, wow, that's done. All these things are out of me. I just have a couple IVs left, and that's it. And so that was Tuesday. The other thing my surgeon said that morning was, he kind of approved me if I wanted to take a shower, because I'd already had one sponge bath on Monday night, which again, that all year, or Sunday night, and then at that point kind of felt a little bit cleaner, but just chest and all that stuff, it was kind of rough to not have any kind of clean feeling when I was laying there. But once you get the tubes out, you'll be good to take a shower. Obviously, don't get let the water run on your incision quite yet, and that kind of thing. And so later that night, I was able to get in the shower, which wasn't the best shower in the world as far as the way hot water didn't come and go, water pressure wasn't great, and so but I did stand in the shower for probably 20 minutes and just let the water hit the back of me. I didn't even wash. I just wanted that feeling. Part of the shower that was nice was I didn't have any IVs at the time, and they were also able to remove the monitor, the heart monitor that was on me. So I was completely free to stand there and just kind of shower. And so that was nice and refreshing. And then I was able to just kind of sit for a minute with nothing hooked up to me. And I think I have a photo of that too, and just kind of sit and rest. And again, that was quite nice to have. So that was on Tuesday. I mentioned the monitor. One of the things that just, as the week progressed and as I got up and walked and just moved around in general, it was quite annoying to have that. So it was 6 leads taped on me. That didn't necessarily bother me, but you had the little wireless monitor piece that weighed a couple pounds, that you had to hold, and there's a pocket in the gown that you can put it in, but then it just pulled the gown down and wasn't comfortable. So when I got up and walked, I'd have to hold on to that monitor and walk, and it just, again, it was more of an annoyance, but early in the week and just throughout the week, it kind of wore on me. And again, I think that's partially being in the hospital and just not feeling great in general, and just having to drag that around. Again, Tuesday morning I did have that another chest X-ray, which again got a little bit better. More walking. The way this hospital is laid out is at each end of the hospital there's a sitting room that's basically all glass that you can look out over Atlanta, and so and it's a giant kind of loop around the whole floor. And so I was able to walk down, sit in those chairs, and just kind of look out. They're actually building a couple buildings right around it, so I was able to watch that, just to kind of keep my mind off of things. But walking became better and better as the week went on. So Tuesday was the day they were hoping I would be able to go home, but my INR had basically, with the 5 milligram that morning, had not moved, and so they bumped me up to 7.5 milligram, and basically said, hey, it's going to take about 48 hours for that to really show. And so basically I knew Tuesday I wasn't going home. So again, Tuesday night a little bit better, pain management was a little bit better, sleep was a little bit better, and so woke up Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning, X-ray came around. I was like, great. My wife had actually left to go get some breakfast. And I was like, cool, I can actually kind of sit up and this won't be hard. But I looked out the door and it was actually a gurney, and it was a different person. The lady said, we got to take you down because we need to get a side view shot too. So, that was the first time I really had to get up without my wife there. And so that was a little daunting, but I probably needed that push. So I got up, walked with the nurse's assistant, and kind of got on the gurney, and we rode down to the first floor, and had my X-ray, and then back up to the room. And so again, those things weren't fun in the moment, but every one of those little pushes were quite helpful, probably to make me realize I could do more than I did, because I think felt nervous about just everything, because nothing felt right at the moment. But so anyway, that was Wednesday morning. Another thing that happened Wednesday morning is a couple times a week they have a class where one of the PAs will have with everyone who's getting ready to be discharged, and just to go through discharge kind of instructions, what to expect, what to do, what not to do when you get home. And so we were still kind of hoping to go home maybe even on that Wednesday, because we were still waiting at that moment to get the INR results for maybe Thursday. So we went to that class, and there was, I think, 6 or 7 of us in that room. I was the only one there with the valve replacement. Everybody else, was there with bypasses, and so that was, just a difference. I was probably the youngest person, at least that I saw, on the whole step-down unit floor by quite a few years. And so, I think that's just kind of the nature of the whole thing. But went through that, and one of the things that struck me immediately, so we went to this little conference room, and just the conference chair that was sitting there, I sat in it, and I just looked at my wife, and I'm like, finally, this chair feels good. Because again, my butt was still hurting. I had a friend had brought in a little massage gun, and to try to help me kind of release some of that. But I sat in that chair, and it finally felt comfortable. So after we went through that class, I told my nurse as I was walking back in the room, I'm like, hey, can you go back and get me one of those chairs, because finally something comfortable. And so she did, and that was kind of a game changer for me, because I was able to sit in that chair, and just I guess the ergonomics of it, because it's made to be more comfortable to sit in versus more sturdy like the hospital room furniture was. But so that was great to have that. Again, just continued on the oxy regimen. Felt pretty good about pain at that point, because I was able to keep it on a better deal, every 3 hours or so. The other thing, by Wednesday, I was feeling pretty good about my walks, and so I was doing 2 or 3 walks a day, trying to do them after every meal, where I'd get up and walk. And typically, what I would do is walk down to one end, sit for a few minutes, and just kind of look out the window and just kind of hang out, and then get up and walk all the way to the other end, sit in that room for a little while, and walk back. There was one day, and I don't remember, it was toward the middle of the week, that I probably walked the halls 5 times and kind of overdid it, and I realized that, I felt good that day, but it kind of put me out the next couple of days, and that's just something I had to learn to kind of pace myself more. But really, Tuesday, Wednesday, really started doing those walks. One of the things that really hit me, and this was probably, again, I'm bouncing around, but just looking through my notes, Monday morning maybe, I woke up and I was just sitting in the chair, and my wife was maybe still asleep, or she was out grabbing food or something like that. And I just remember sitting there just in the pain that I was in, discomfort, because and I can hear the valve clicking and ticking. And I still can, but gotten much more used to it, but I can just hear it. And just, I remember kind of that in my mind thinking, did I make the right decision? Like, is this, because I felt so bad, and then I could just hear this thing so loudly, and looking around, sitting in the hospital, and a few days before I felt great other than being tired, very active, and now here I am just sitting, and that was something that was kind of tough emotionally, and I think that's probably a natural swing in things, but again, that was early in the week, and when my wife and I were talking yesterday about what the week was like, one of the things she said is it probably took until Tuesday for me to really start getting my personality back. And she said that, obviously nothing wrong with that, but the first few days, I guess I was still really just the drugs and everything was still pretty high, so just didn't have much energy to do anything. But Tuesday, she said, it was the first time I kind of cracked a joke again with one of the nurses that came in, and so I think that's kind of part of that progression. So that was Monday when I was feeling pretty down, and Tuesday I started feeling a little bit better, and I think that comes from several things, time, being a little bit more active and walking and those kind of things. Appetite started coming back a little bit more. Actually got takeout food for a couple times. We had visitors and friends came. The first food I grabbed was from across the way. There was a little pub, and it had a Chicago dog, and that thing was delicious. So that was quite fun to have that instead of the standard hospital food. But again, I had some visitors, and the hard thing with visitors was, again, I live a little over an hour from the hospital, and so all my friends, roughly the same thing, and I would go from feeling great and said, yeah, like, sure, let whoever come, and by the time they got there, I would be feeling, the pain would have kicked in, or I'd be exhausted, and that was something just to try to figure out through the week, because in a short amount of time, I could be feeling great to bad, and so just trying to figure that whole process out. Again, checking the INR every day. That was, not really moving. And so what the surgeon had said by Wednesday, said, we just need to get this moving in the right direction so we can get you out of here. And so they moved me up to a 10 milligram dosage, and hoping that would move it up. And so didn't move it a lot, but by the time Friday morning came, everything, like, it was at least moving in the right direction. And they said, hey, we're going to move you to a 12.5 milligram dose and send you home. Just want to make sure you get that checked on Monday at the clinic, the Coumadin clinic that you have there in town. So that finally came in. The other thing that happened on Wednesday was just to kind of help that INR, or at least my understanding is a little bit different, but they gave me the heparin drip, so the IV. And so I went from not having any IVs for a couple of days and being able to move about a little bit freely to having that IV again, but obviously that was just to make sure that my blood wasn't clotting. And so, part of that was every 6 hours, I had to have a blood draw on top of the morning blood draw to make sure that heparin was working. And for the first, it really never got in play. They had to increase the dosage every single time. I guess my body's just one of those that didn't like the thinner, I guess, and was more resistant to it. But so that was every 6 hours, and so I had the drip in my right arm, and so they just kept taking the draws out of my left arm, and that was not something I enjoyed at all. I was bruised on the arm where they kept taking them. But I guess again, it's all part of what it was. Just those inconveniences that are painful and compound itself. But anyway, so I did have that heparin drip, and so I had to walk around, and I couldn't get up out of bed by myself after that, because then I'd have to unplug the drip machine to roll it around, but I couldn't reach the plug, so I could kind of get up, but then I'd have to ask my wife or a nurse to, hey, can you unplug that for me? Which again, was a little bit of annoyance going from being able to get up and move to not, but that's okay. Everything kind of worked out there. Again, doing my 2 to 3 walks per day, and going that way. So, again, every morning looking at the INR. Finally, Friday morning, the INR was like 1.54, somewhere in that range, and it had jumped from 1.2. And so, like I said, when my surgeon came in that Friday morning, he said, hey, sending you home today, I'm going to bump you to 12.5 milligrams on the warfarin every day. And then on Monday, go to your Coumadin clinic to get that checked. But I want to get you out of here. So, that was a great thing to know that, hey, I'm finally getting discharged and leaving, because I was kind of hoping to have left on Tuesday, and here it was Friday. But it was also nerve-wracking, to be honest, because for a week, everything that I was nervous about or anything that I had, there were professionals there to help, and nurses that were there as soon as I needed them, and that kind of thing, to knowing that, hey, now you're going home. I still didn't feel great. I still didn't, still had pain, just a lot of different things, but that's just kind of the bittersweet part of being discharged, at least for me. So, found that out at 7 that morning, and kind of got all the paperwork done and ready to go around 11:30. My discharge was not the greatest, and again, I think that goes back to the shortage. My nurse on that day basically didn't tell me anything other than, okay, you're going to be discharged. You got all the paperwork, and I'm like, maybe I do, I don't know. But I finally was able to talk to the PA, because he was working on trying to get me set up with the Coumadin clinic, because you had to have a referral and all this strange stuff. But he was able to walk us through more of what was going on. So that was, a little frustrating. I mean, he was great and was great throughout the whole week with explaining things. But again, the checkout process or the discharge process just wasn't very smooth. But anyway, so, I was once I knew, hey, that's done, I pulled the last IV out of my arm. I was, pulled the monitors off. I was completely unhooked from everything, which again felt great. But then, it was time to figure out, hey, I need to take the gown off and get dressed. Probably on Monday or Tuesday of the week, I was finally able to put on a pair of, just like workout shorts, and that helped me feel a little bit more normal. But here I went from, wearing the gown to put on clothes to go home to be discharged. And so, once I got those on, it felt normal again. I was able just to kind of sit on the couch that was in the room and have the lunch that was brought to me while I was waiting. And then, it was time for discharge. And so my wife went and got the car and was waiting outside, and the nurse went and found a wheelchair and loaded me up and rolled me down, It's kind of a surreal feeling because I haven't left that floor in a week, and to be down and rolling through that first floor where I'd come in a week earlier to have the surgery, just kind of striking. But it was also the first time I've been outside in Georgia, and July is not cool, so it was 95 degrees and very humid outside. And I remember as we rolled out the door toward the van that it hit me, and I was like, wow, this is an incredible feeling after being inside the cool hospital all week. But I'd taken a little bit more oxy before the ride home. I'd kind of managed that because I knew that it could be a little bit painful. Sat in the back seat, had my pillow between the seat belt, and traffic was terrible. Again, welcome to Atlanta, but driving home took about 90 minutes to get home versus the 50 minutes it would take without traffic. And I remember really just kind of closing my eyes and trying to sleep. I kind of dozed in and out because of the medication, but it had some really weird kind of dreams or thoughts. And by the time we made it into town, I kind of realized, man, I don't like how this is making me feel. I still needed it for the pain management, but just didn't like how the oxy was treating me. But anyway, one of the things we had to do when we got into town was stop by the pharmacy to get my warfarin, aspirin, and there was one other medication. I can't remember. There's been a couple, but I had to go pick that up at the pharmacy. Well, when we got to the first pharmacy, we had to wait 20 minutes before they reopened for their lunch break. Once my wife went in there, she came back and said, "Hey, they don't have warfarin, at this one," and so she had to make them call around. And one of the other pharmacies across town had it, so we said, "Okay, great, whatever." We got the medicine that we could get. It was the oxy prescription, the aspirin, and the warfarin. But so I was able to get the aspirin and the oxy there at the first one, and then make it to the house, and my wife went back out later. So again, that was Saturday night through Friday midday in that cardiac step-down unit, and so much stuff happened. I'm probably not hitting everything, not even every milestone, but that's what I really remembered. Again, it was the pain management was tough, and then just the processes throughout the week of moving more again was not easy, but progressively got better. I had pain in my back just after the surgery and having everything tight, not be able to really move my chest and everything. So much pain in my back that we borrowed a massage chair type of thing from a friend of ours, and I was able to kind of sit on that, at least loosen up my back some. But that was tough, my back, and again, my glutes still were just rock hard and hurt pretty much all week. And so those things were not fun, but getting up and walking, appetite getting back, starting to feel a little bit better throughout the week were great. But again, overall, the care was great. The nurse shortage is again real and tough. But I got the care I needed. It was a bittersweet moment to leave the hospital because I knew I wanted to be at home because I'd been there so long, but also the nerves and knowing that, hey, I'm going to be kind of on my own then. But anyway, so that was what that week in the step-down unit was, and so that ended my hospital stay. My next video I'll talk about having that first week at home, and then from there I'll try to do a each week update to kind of keep everybody keep you up to speed on feeling and that kind of thing. So that's it. A week after my valve replacement surgery, I was on the way home and feeling somewhat better, but still managing pain and just discomfort overall. So I'll talk to you in the next video.